Hello everybody, Fast Hippie here, and we're about to watch another awesome game from the Argent Arena. This game is between Mix and CAnon. Mix is playing Luke tonight, and CAnon is playing Kimbhe. This is a game between two brawlers, so there'll be a lot of movement, a lot of board positioning, and a lot of subtle but interesting effects going on. No super powered supernovas, but more about positioning and just good play beat after beat. Starting out here, Mix plays Chrono Drive, which is a pretty sensible move for Luke. It gives him a full board range drive, and it's fairly fast. CAnon plays Expulsion Drive here, and this is one of the things that is a really bad thing to do against Luke, which is to say, playing a low speed drive. CAnon is able... Luke is able to go fast with almost every move because of his styles. And so if you play a low speed drive, as CAnon does, you could just get seriously punished for it and just lose the beat right out. As it is, because he played Expulsion, he forced Mix to not end up on his staff. So it might have been in his favor, even though he lost the beat 3-0, just to keep Mix off that staff. So moving into beat 2, Luke plays Fainting Dodge. I actually think this is really smart because at this point both Chrono and Drive is down, and so if Kimbhe was able to set up with Quake, which she tried to do here, she would have been able to establish extremely powerful board positioning and basically put Luke behind for several turns. As it turns out, Dodge is the perfect move here to prevent CAnon from establishing an extremely advantageous board position. So this might not look like a big deal, but this beat, if CAnon had been able to get the full retreat, it would have just put him in an incredibly powerful board positioning with Luke having both Chrono and Drive down. So as we move into beat 3, first things first, Fainting allows Luke to get all the way into melee position where he really likes to play. And he plays Memento Strike here. So this is a huge payoff move. He's trying to hit for 8. And Kimbhe actually perfectly counters here, CAnon, by playing Quickening Grasp. Man, this is a move that I would probably struggle to play. Quickening Grasp, I mean, is the correct move here, but it's just so scary because if Luke had played something like Shot, he would have been able to just hit for 6 here. So, I mean, it ended up being the perfect call by CAnon, but man, it's so scary when they have Memento and they're so close. But it is the kind of ups and downs with Luke. He's got a couple big payoff moves, and Memento and Fusion are his big payoff moves. So, yeah, it was just really good play by CAnon in this beat. So now as we move to beat 4, Luke plays Fusion Drive. And so the idea here is that Luke wants to drive into the center of the board and then use Fusion to throw Kimbhe into the corner. This works out really well in a couple ways because not only does he get the extra damage for Fusion, but he would also end up standing on the staff, so he'd be able to just absolutely crush CAnon this beat and hit for 7, I think, if this lands. As it is, CAnon ends up playing Expulsion Dodge here. Expulsion Dodge is a really good dodge pair because Expulsion can pull your opponent out of the corner so that then you can dodge over them, which is exactly what CAnon will do this beat. Pull him out of the corner, advance 1 over him, and cancel out your opponent's attack even if they have themselves cornered. Yep, and because of the Expulsion Dodge, Mix will miss, and Expulsion allows CAnon to replace his staff, and he puts it right under himself so he can get the bonuses from the staff. So now we are moving into beat 5, and Mix has a ton of time tokens, just a plethora. And so for this reason, he ends up playing Eternal Shot, which is one of your most powerful moves if you have time tokens. Essentially, at this point, Luke has Soak 6 if he needs it, so he could basically win any fight. But as it turns out, CAnon plays Penumbral Strike here because he saw the Internal Shot coming, and although he is not able to deal any damage to Luke, and Luke through the Penumbral is able to deal 1 back, I think this is actually a huge win for CAnon because CAnon was able to get all 5 of Luke's time counters away and only took 1 damage in the process, which was really good. If CAnon would have done the more expected move of Penumbral Shot, Luke could have kept 1 or 2 additional time counters and had a lot more options moving into this next beat. So CAnon plays Fainting Burst here. This is a move he's trying to dodge away. As it is with CANon's options down, CAnon still have both Drive and Shot available. Now Drive gets beaten by Fainting Burst, but he still has Shot available. So I find Fainting Burst is a pretty scary move. Perhaps Mix was playing on the fact that he's always been outspeeding, so maybe CAnon is too afraid to play Shot. But yeah, the Fainting Burst seemed a little risky here, but Burst is always kind of that way, that it is somewhat risky, because if you do connect with it, you can get free beats, but if you don't, you will be outsped for sure. CAnon goes with Quickening Drive, which ends up being really good because Quickening gives you that extra range and that extra motion, the extra advance one, and so CAnon is able to counter the dodge or counter the burst and close the distance and win the beat right out. So now we're moving into beat 7, and at this point they're kind of in the starting positions, except that the staff is behind CAnon. Oh, just kidding. Luke stays close. I always forget all about those after movements, end of beat movements. So Luke plays Switch Dodge, and Kimbhe counters with Switch Dodge. And so this is kind of a downbeat, and I was actually really surprised by Kimbhe's move here, which is to go into Caster. And this is really awesome because I think the expectation of Kimbhe is they would move down the speed ladder, which is kind of what you do when you go into a clash. You pick your highest attack, and Grasp is that. And it's likely, since Luke is in the center, he wants to stay in the center. So Caster ends up being just the most perfect attack here. If CAnon had like Strike available, she could have taken the blow and not been stunned, but she wouldn't have been able to hit because Grasp would have pushed him out of range. But Caster allows her to have the range and the stun guard. And because he expected Luke not to move and stay in the center, it ended up being a really good move to clash into. So now we are moving into beat 8. So let's see what happens here. So in beat 8, Luke plays Chrono Dodge. Now my expectation is he's not actually, I guess with Chrono Dodge, perhaps he was planning to move 1 forward and then move back to the center of the board. We'll see how this ends up going, because he wants to keep the position on the staff, because the staff gives him an additional 2 power as long as he's standing on it. Now he's not going to be able to stay on the staff because his opponent played Expulsion, which means CAnon will be able to move the staff at end of beat. And so even though he kind of did a little dance and stayed on the staff, Kimbhe is going to be able to keep the staff underneath her after she moves. So it was Mix's idea all along to use Chrono to kind of shuffle back and forth and keep that center board positioning, while also having dodge available if his opponent went for an attack. But Expulsion ended up being a good counter here because it allowed CAnon to move the staff. So now we're moving in an internal shot, and this kind of makes sense. Luke has a lot of time counters. Eternal is a full board. Dodge is down, so Kimbhe can't dodge this attack. So Luke is basically going for his payoff move. CAnon counters with Penumbral Shot, which is a very similar attack. It does a little bit more damage, but has a little less soak. But in the end, it'll, like before, it ends up being a 1-0 beat in the favor of Luke. But as I said before, a 1-0 beat where you get your opponent to spend all of their time counters like Luke does here is actually, I think, very much in the favor of CAnon. So now we are moving into beat 10. And we'll see where things go here. Oh yeah, so Luke plays Fusion Flash here. I found this kind of strange because Fusion, I mean, it does keep them at range so they can't strike back, but you can't throw them in the corner most likely. So I would think that you'd play Fusion with not something like Flash, because if Flash has that starter beat advance 1, so even in the best case scenario, you're probably likely just to advance past them and push them off the staff, but you're not able to throw them back and get that additional damage from Fusion. As it goes, they both go for the super speed, and Luke wins the speed war because Flash is super fast, and he is able to keep CAnon off of her staff. And because of the ignore stun guard on Flash, he's able to, although only poke him for 1, get him off the staff, which is in his favor. Like I said, Fusion was a little strange here. It's hard for me to know all the options without looking at it, but it seemed like Fusion was a little strange here because you're unable to throw him in the corner when you use Flash. Saying that, if he would have went Fusion Grasp, he would have tied. So I guess he was probably just going for the fastest attack he could go for. So Chrono Drive it makes sense here. He would be able to, if he wanted to, use the Chrono to kind of bounce around and end up on the staff. It is a range 3 drive, which is pretty powerful. And it's probably one of his fastest options. So Mix is really focusing on playing his fastest options turn after turn. As it turns out, they clash, and then they clash again, and they move to the third beat, and CAnon goes into caster again. And this actually, I thought, was really interesting because the problem with caster is if your opponent is faster than you, you have to put the staff underneath them, and that means that they'll get that additional damage. But what happens here is CAnon actually moves his staffs away from him so he doesn't get the additional damage, and Fulminating allows CAnon to move the staff as a before effect. So before he moves his staff underneath him, and then caster has the hit confirm to actually hit his opponent. So I didn't even know you could do that before I saw this. It just wasn't something I thought about. Caster always had that risk of, although you put the staff underneath them, if they go faster than you, they get that additional damage. So I didn't even think that this is an option until I saw CAnon do it. So we are now moving into beat 12. And Luke plays switch dodge. And this makes sense because I think a lot of his fast options are down. The life totals are getting pretty low. So he's just trying to play very safe here. Kimbhe plays Expulsion Grasp, and I assume this was either for a clash or because CAnon saw the dodge coming. It's a pretty strange move. I guess he was just trying to pull him off the staff so he wouldn't take the damage, but it's pretty strange. I'm not really sure why this was, because because it wasn't especially fast or especially damaging, but as it works out very well in Canon's favor, because she's able to get that staff underneath him and have central board positioning, which is just really good setup for the next beat. So now we're moving in to beat 14 or 13, and Luke plays Fusion Flash again. I guess the idea is just to get a dead beat so he can get some time counters. And again, you can use that fusion to create distance between you to get her off the staff. And so we go all speed all the time again. Luke is really pushing this because this is his fastest attack, so they go all speed, and Kimbhe counters with speed. And so the thought here is that Canon is probably trying to outspeed Luke, but Luke has picked one of his fastest attacks, so we'll see how this ends up. And as it ends up, Quickening Drive with the Quickening additional effect actually clashes, so then they move into the next attack pair. And he goes for the fastest attack, and Canon calls that he's going to go for his fastest attack, so they clash again. And then Luke goes for his next fastest attack, and Canon calls that he's going to go for his next fastest attack, and clashes again. And then at this point, Luke is out of fast attacks, and so he has to play something slow. He plays Burst, and Quickening Strike, because of that move 1, actually gives Canon the full board range he needs to counter the burst. And so even though Luke is able to burst away, Canon is able to close the distance, and then the damage, the extra damage from the anti-force and the damage from strike is enough to finish Luke off. So this was a fantastic game. I hope you enjoyed watching much as I did. I hope you learned some things as you go. I was really impressed by the clashes into caster. This game, I didn't even think about using caster as a move that you can go off of a clash, but it's actually an extremely powerful move because it gives you a very unique base that beats a lot of the moves that the typical paper rock scissors of clashing doesn't allow you to play. So it's just a really powerful move out of a clash, and I was really impressed by it. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this and you learned along with me, and I hope you have a good evening. Bye.